I've been fired. It's not the first time I've been fired. And I think in our business, when you work for a big company in media and, you say what you think, there's an expectation that you could get fired. So I've always had that. And I've always tried to take the long view, not just on media, but on life. All graves go unvisited in the end. I always think that. And so I was surprised. I didn't, expect to get fired that morning at all in April. So I was shocked, but I wasn't really shocked. And I wasn't mad. It's not my company. And when you work for someone else, that person reserves the right, and in fact has inherently the right to decide whether you work there or not. And I don't know why I was fired. I really don't. I'm not angry about it. You can believe me or not, but I think you can feel that I'm not. And, I wish Fox well. There was, ugly leaking, I'm a racist or whatever they leaked, or someone there leaked to the New York Times, but that's not true. And I think the people who run the company know that's not true. I actually don't think they did it. And I'm not mad about it. And I've been happy. I guess the only thing that bothers me is I'm 54. And when you get a little bit older, and my wife and I, our children are grown and we live in rural settings, as you do, because we believe in nature and God and dogs, you can lose your drive. I mean, it's just a little bit too nice, kind of. And I do feel like we, people who are healthy and aware and who can read, have an obligation to be engaged in the life of the community they live in and the life of the country they live in and the life of the world to the extent that they can. And so my only fear has been maybe being a little bit too happy. I've spent a lot of time trout fishing, a lot of time, we have 4 dogs, a lot of time with my dogs and my wife, and a lot of kind of late breakfast outside and stuff. And, that's not, that's great, but life has got to be more than that. So now I'm back to work, and I'm grateful to be doing that.
The fact that
First, I always try. I'm over 50, so why wouldn't I just say exactly what I think at all times? And I do. And so if I had, whatever my racial views are, I would just say them, and I'm just saying them now. So my views about race begin with my religious faith, which is not very sophisticated, but is sincere.
Yeah.
And that begins with the belief, the knowledge, the certainty that God created people, that they're not objects, they're not machines, they're not widgets in a bin waiting to be assembled by some company. They are distinct individuals with distinct souls, and they have equal value in the eyes of God. Doesn't mean they have equal ability. Doesn't mean they all look the same, but it means they have equal inherent value. And my politics flow from that belief.
Yes.
And so the idea that you would reduce people to their race and say, we're going to treat this person better or worse because of his skin color is repugnant to me. And it's something that I've argued against every day that I was at Fox News, I think all of my life. You can't punish or reward people based on their immutable characteristics.
Yes.
Because they didn't choose those characteristics. So it's inherently unfair. It's inherently immoral. I'm totally opposed to it. And so if that's a racist position, I guess, I'll just stand and take the punishment. I don't think that is. I think that's an argument against racism. I think it's wrong to reduce people to qualities they were born with and they can't control. Period.
Yes.
My views on immigration are super simple and I think mainstream and sensible. The fact of who lives in a country more than any other fact determines what the country is like. And so if you change it radically over a very short period of time, you're going to have a lot of social upheaval, a lot of churn. It's going to rattle people. People can't metabolize change very well at all. The Industrial Revolution led to Stalinism and then the Third Reich. These are basic facts. It's not an attack on anyone's color at all. And I'm, whatever. So those are my views. I support a lot of, I don't know how I feel about immigration as a topic. There are a lot of immigrants I love, including my best friend, for whatever it's worth. So I'm not against immigrants. That's insane. But the way that the United States is doing immigration is designed to wreck the country and to make it unstable and to destroy any social cohesion whatsoever or social trust, and make people hate each other and add to racial division, which I hate because it's not solvable. In contrast to, say, class division. If we're arguing about class, well, at least class theoretically can change. I can ascend or descend classes, but race doesn't change because we're not responsible for it. We're created that way. So you don't want racial conflict. That's the one thing you don't want. And I feel that in the United States, our leaders not only want racial conflict, but are stoking it. But as a practical matter, just in the context of U.S. politics, and perhaps it's similar in the U.K., the term racist or white supremacist or white nationalist, these are terms designed to stop people from talking. I remember the first time I was called a white supremacist. I mean, for whatever it's worth, I don't want to sound offensive, but I grew up in Southern California in the 70s, living with a father who was, in modern terms, very racially progressive or something. He was always saying, God created people. Racism didn't even make sense to me. That was not a factor in my life at all. And we lived right next to Mexico, whatever. So, but the first time I was called a white supremacist, I was like, geez, it hurt. It stung. And I thought, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know that I'm not one, but I know that that's like the worst thing you can be. That's like calling someone a Nazi, or a monster, or Satan, or what is that? And I was bothered by it. It was right when I started my last Fox show. So it was in the fall of 2016. And I did a kind of long, very sincere, I mean it too, sincere script about how, this is what I believe, and we're all created by God, and you should never punish or reward people based on their skin color. And it had no effect at all. And then I realized the people using those terms are not sincere at all. There's no sincerity. The words have no meaning to them, except as they're useful as tools to acquire political power and to make anyone who stands in the way of that shut up or go away or go to prison. And so once I realized they weren't sincere, then it's like, that's between me and God. And not only am I not a racist, I'm not much of a hater. But when I think about Trump right now, so it's July of 2023, I'm struck by his foreign policy views. Trump is the only person with stature in the Republican Party, really, who's saying, wait a second, why are we supporting an endless war in Ukraine? And that, leaving aside whether Trump's going to get the nomination or get elected president or would be a good president, I can't even assess that. All I can say at this point is I'm so grateful that he has that position. He's right. And everyone in Washington's wrong. Everyone. And Trump is right on that question. And it's a big question. That war is reshaping the world. It's reshaping the economy of the world. It's reshaping populations. I was just in Romania last week, which is, of course, shares a border with Ukraine. The refugees in that region, the number of people killed in that war, Europe will never be the same because of this war. And it really matters. And Trump alone among popular figures in both parties understands that, and I'm grateful for it. Whether he gets the nomination or gets elected, words really matter. Saying something true out loud matters. And he is saying true things about Ukraine, and God bless him. That's how I feel. Well, so I don't work for Elon. He's paid me zero money. I don't think I ever want to work for anyone again. I've done that. I'd like to make money. I think that's fair. I've made zero money since I left. And that's fine. But at some point I'd like to, but I'm not working for Elon Musk. He hasn't offered to hire me. And if he did, I wouldn't accept. But what he's done is offered me what he's offered every other user of Twitter, which is a chance to broadcast your views without a gatekeeper there. But I do think, I think the technology at Twitter is, my expectation, is evolving. And I think, the subscription model, might work or it might not. I don't know, but I think it might. And I plan to stay there. But what social media offer in the short term, at least for me, is an audience, but also a reason, this is personal, but a reason to write. I can't think clearly without writing. I started in this business as a magazine writer and a book writer, newspaper writer, and I need to write things out. I'm very dyslexic and I can't, I have trouble processing information in certain ways. And unless I'm forced to write a script, I can't really decide what I think about something. And so the daily or regular discipline of writing a script forces me, and in some cases it really is forced. I don't want to do it. I'd much rather go fishing or bird hunting, I would. But if I have to, I will. And there's something wonderful in that. Writing a script, as you know, forces you to think through everything about the issue, to have a much deeper understanding of it. At least for me, that's true. So I couldn't go too long without writing, or my IQ would drop dramatically. I don't think I'd ever recover. Well, I think my role is to tell the truth to the extent I can see it, to say what I think is true, always with the knowledge that we see everything through a glass darkly. We don't see things clearly. We don't have perspective on ourselves, the world around us. We get a lot wrong. I've gotten a lot wrong, that's for sure. But you do your best, and you cannot allow people to force you to lie, period. So that's how I see my role. I think you're asking the right question. And I asked the same thing about the climate movement. I mean, I'm bewildered by it. Apart from my own family, there's nothing more important to me than nature. I think I spend an above average time in nature, amount of time. I mean, I've organized my whole life to be in nature. So I really, really care about it. And I'm very upset about the many ways in which it's despoiled, at least in my country. I mean, nature's not doing well. The environmental movement is gone where I live. And we pollute. We put up chain stores and strip malls and pave things we should not pave. We are very tough on nature in the United States. And the environmental movement does nothing to stop that. And so my question for the climate people, and I have no doubt the climate is changing. It's always changed. I live in a place that was completely sculpted by the glaciers, which only melted 10,000 years ago. There were people living where I live in northwestern Maine when the glaciers receded, the Native Americans, 10,000 years ago. So this is a feature of life on Earth. And so I have no doubt it's changing again. And I would be completely open to the possibility that people's behavior is accelerating that change or driving it to some extent. It doesn't sound crazy to me. I don't think it's proven, but I'm open to it. Of course I am. My question is really simple. Which of your solutions to climate change disempower you? So when you act, you're a father, on behalf of your children, you are doing things because you love them. They're not necessarily in your interest. Like, you'd rather go take a sauna or do some yoga or hop on your wife. But no, you have a child with needs, so you love that child, so you do something for that child. That's what it looks like to serve and love someone, is to do something you don't want to do, that doesn't help you in any way, but at least potentially helps that other person. I see the climate movement not doing one thing that doesn't enrich or empower the climate movement and its corporate sponsors. Not one. So, for example, not to be boorish here in lecture, but I'll stop with this. Like, if I understand, the ecology correctly, trees are helpful if you're worried about rising CO2, correct? Because they consume it and then emit what? Oxygen. So if you're really worried about climate change caused by carbon dioxide, you'd probably be planting a lot of trees. I don't see a ton of, and I would be very for that as someone who truly loves trees and spends a lot of time thinking about trees and have a lot of trees and maintain a lot of trees. I love trees almost more than anything. So where's the nationwide effort to reforest the United States? I don't see it. Instead, I see a lot of solar panels from China that don't work, that actually wreck the environment, industrial wind farms that wreck where I live. I live near them. I know what they do. They kill all these birds of prey. They're destroying the environment, but they're becoming richer. So on January 6th, tell me one solution that doesn't make you more powerful.
Yeah.
There's not one. So that's an indication of bad faith to me. And of course, I'm not going to be boorish and I'll stop, but anyone who's interested in the uses to which January 6th has been put by the people in charge in Washington can look it up. I mean, the surveillance that was justified, the total capture of our banks, for example, by the FBI in the wake of January 6th is completely shocking to any civil libertarian. You can't call my bank and find out what I spent money on. You don't have a warrant. What? That's not allowed under our Constitution, but they did it because it was an insurrection. Okay. So, I don't know. I can't even guess as the mechanics of January 6th. Did the many federal agents in the crowd do this? Did they go along with it? I don't know the answer, and I'm not going to speculate. But I know in the aftermath of January 6th, that event was used by predators in our political sphere to increase their power and to disempower the population they supposedly serve. And I'm very offended by that. Not because I'm some crazed populist. I'm not. I don't want to burn anything down. I'm very temperamentally conservative. I like to build things, not break them. But you can't look at me with a straight face and tell me you're defending democracy when you get JP Morgan to go through my credit card statements. You're lying. That's my only point. You're lying. I hope so. Yes. I mean, the key to joy and wisdom is admitting that you're not God. That is the key. That's the key to life, in my opinion, admitting you're not God. It's essential to happiness and to honesty to admit when you're wrong. And it's so freeing. I mean, it's the basis of the recovery movement. I realized I was powerless. And I just have lived that. And I understand very well, personally, the human impulse to hide being wrong. Like, no one wants to admit being wrong because in so doing, you admit you lack the power that you pretended that you had. But I just find it so liberating. I was wrong. I thought this, it turned out not to be true. I was wrong. Yes. I didn't know. I am not God. Once you say that, everything, then you realize you have nothing to be afraid of. By the way, everybody already knows what you're lying about. People know who you are. I tell my children this all the time. You think you're getting away with it. Oh, I'm secretly whatever it is. Everybody already knows. And they love you anyway, or they hate you anyway. It doesn't matter. We know because we can smell. We're like dogs. We know who the other person is instantly. All the pretense is pointless. And so how beautiful is it to just say, nope, here's who I am. Yeah. And they can't. And I look at someone like Tony Blinken, who's our Secretary of State, who's obviously way over his head, not a genius, but probably above average in cleverness, but not, he's not like a great statesman or a great person or whatever. And he feels, you just watch him on television, he feels this burden to pretend, I'm Secretary of State, I got it all under control. You have no freaking idea, Tony Blinken. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen. You've been wrong again and again and again, but you can't admit it. So you're terrified of being exposed. And this is, I'm not attacking Tony Blinken or singling him out, I hope not unfairly. This is where we all find ourselves. God, I hope nobody knows. Whatever it is, I'm secretly gay, or I gained 20 pounds, or I'm actually very vain. Everyone already knows. Calm down, just admit it. And I hope people who are wrong about COVID can take the life-affirming path of admitting, the dignity-preserving. When you admit you're wrong, you actually preserve your dignity. When you continue to lie, you lose your dignity. People don't get that. They think it's the opposite. Oh, I was kind of, Stop the bullshit. We all know. Admit it and become fully human. Then you can respect yourself. How can you respect yourself if you're lying? You can't. This is a Putin puppet. The Putin puppet thing I've never taken seriously. I am a passionate Tolstoy fan. Predates Putin, by the way. I love Tolstoy, and I mean that. The Kreutzer Sonatas, I just read it. It's an amazing book. But I've never been to Russia. I don't speak the language. I have no special effect. I mean, the whole thing is insane. And by the way, that never bothered me because I'm the most I'm so American, it's like a joke. Yeah, I said at the outset, people are united in their value. I think their value, each person's value is identical because they're all created by the Creator. But people are different. I mean, they are. I have 4 children. They're not all the same, right? People are different. And they kind of live the way they want to live. And it's sort of any effort to make them live in ways that you want them to live that they don't want to live, like, is doomed to concentration camps, kind of, in the end. Like, you need to use a lot of force to make people change basic habits that they've decided they want. So that suggests to me much smaller administrative zones or countries or whatever you want to call them. The problem is technology makes it really easy to manipulate huge groups. Biden just reclassified the Kennedy documents 60 years after his assassination. No one, even peripherally involved, is still alive. So what could possibly be the sources and methods that were supposedly showing the world by declassifying these are so outdated they're irrelevant. They were using disappearing ink in 1963. So why in the world would we be continuing to hide the truth about the Kennedy assassination 60 years later? And of course, the answer is obvious, because it implicates not individuals, but institutions, and reveals them as complicit in a murder and in the overthrow of the U.S. government. And the U.S. government is complicit in the overthrow of the U.S. government. And that's the truth. I know that for a fact, because I interviewed someone who saw the documents. And so, we have a long way. Look, the bottom line is, unless there is a compelling reason that relates to imminent physical security of citizens, we should never hide the truth from the population in a democracy, period. Because that is incompatible with democracy. Secrecy is incompatible with democracy. How can I'm running the government, but you can't tell me what the government's doing? That's not democracy. It's something else. And don't insult me by calling it a democracy, because it's very much not. And so, yes, there's much that remains secret. I'm not going to speculate. You don't need to be a conspiracy nut. We have, in the United States, we have over 1 billion federal documents that remain classified. 1 billion, going back to the Second World War. So that's a democracy? That is not a democracy. It's just not. Tell me how it is.